Let's talk about the comment section. And with the comment, we want to know who are going to be fired and those who are going to be retained. And the logic here is, if you are not receiving any net pay, then you're going to be fired. Otherwise, you'll be retained. So you're using the same function, which is if, and the logic test will be if your net pay is greater than 0. So there are multiple ways of doing this. Actually, around 8 or 6 of them. So there's no specific or one path that you follow in order to achieve your objective. As long as you figure out your way, there are multiple ways of coming up with the logic test. So for me, I'm opting to say that if your net pay was greater than 0, then comma, value if true, you will be retained. That means at least you are paid. Comma, if you're not retained, then you're fired. So if I were to fill, the next thing is I want to know how many are fired. No, actually, how many are retained, because now I can go to the report section. So the function here is COUNTIF. And now we are counting with some condition or some sort of criteria somewhere. So the range will be the comments part, comma, the criteria will be retained. So we must enclose in a split marks. And I can see I have 14 of them. Let's talk about highest cell. And here, the objective is, how do we combine two functions at the same time? So we're used to having nested, but here I want to use the function if together with the maximum. And the goal is, I want the software to tell me who was the employee with the highest cell. So I will start with the if. If your cell, which is now cell E2, equals max, that means your cell is the one which is the maximum there. So I need to list some items so that the software will go and look for this cell that is maximum. So I will list down all the items in the cells column, but now I have to close that parenthesis. And now with the comma, the software wants to know what should happen if the value is true. So I want a text, say return to me a text saying hi. comma. Otherwise, the rest should have some dash. So I'm putting dash enclosed in speech mark. I'll press enter, and the software wants to know, okay, should I have parentheses for you? I want to be lazy, so I'll just say yes. And the first person is getting a dash. I autofill. I'm getting some results, though it's a bit confusing. It's not possible for me to have 2 employees with the highest, yet I want the maximum. So there's something that we need to do. So I'll introduce the concept of absolute referencing and also relative referencing. And by now, this concept, you should be comfortable with them because you have covered during the basic computer class. But when you say absolute referencing, all you're talking about is you want to lock this range. So the column K2 to K25, you want to tell the software, focus more on this range. And we'll do that by using the $sign. So there are 2 approaches, or there are 2 ways to do that. The first one, you manually enter it, or you can select and use the F4 key. So let's start with the first one. I'll have a $sign at the beginning of E and between E and 2. So that means I've locked that first cell. And then I also go and lock this cell E25. So at the beginning and at the end. That's one way of doing it. The second one, I think we'll do in our next concept that we're going to learn. So for now, let's do with the one you entered the $sign manually. And if I press enter, okay, I'm told I have some error somewhere. Okay, direct me. Also, it should not be at the end of 2.5. So it should be at the beginning and then at between E and 2.5. So I autofill, and it says Faith is the employee who had the highest cell within that period of time. Take home there is you can use or you can combine 2 functions at the same time. Let's talk about status. And you have some details in a different worksheet. So we have status here. We want to know what are the status for this employee. And if you check this worksheet ref, there's some information. It says what? Code, status, paid period. And for status, you can see full-time, part-time, contract, and so forth. So that means the code you're seeing there have some sort of meaning in terms of status and paid period. So FT in terms of status means full-time. And assume your role is to transfer all that here. So if you had 1 million people, remember Excel can occupy up to 1 million rows. So depending with the data you're trying to transfer from one worksheet to another, then you don't want to be copy pasting, or you want to check what is there so that you go and compare. Instead, you can use what you call VLOOKUP. basically means vertical lookup, or also H lookup for horizontal lookup. What does this mean? When you say vertical lookup, that means you're looking for information between two tables, and this information, the headings are in the vertical columns. That is, they're in the column section. For horizontal is when the titles are in the rows. So let's start with VLOOKUP, because code, status, and paid period are in the vertical of the columns. Same applies to where we are transferring the details. So we want the status to come here. So we said we're going to use VLOOKUP. Equal sign, select VLOOKUP. But now we're talking about lookup value. What is a lookup value? This is the common value that links between these two worksheets. And that's the basis of a lot of things moving forward, because some of you, I know you'll want to understand about database. And with database language like SQL, we normally talk about primary key, which connects tables. So you should remember this word when you'll be in that session. So the lookup value will now link that worksheet employee and the worksheet ref, because you need to transfer information from one worksheet to another. You're querying, you're extracting some details. So I'll say the lookup value is FT. So I'm telling the software, go to a different worksheet and look for a value FT. But you should be careful, because where do you start working from? So for me, I already have an issue here, so I'd rather start afresh. So when you start working, you should start from where you want the details to come from. So you should be in the employee worksheet. And I'll say what? Equal sign, VLOOKUP. The lookup value is now FT, but FT in the code under employee. So I'm telling the software, go and look for this value FT. Where is this FT? So if I say comma, the software wants to know a table array. So table array is the table where the software should look for this FT. So I'll go to ref, select the table array, which is now that table. And if you pay attention, we're selecting starting from the lookup value, the title of the lookup value. So we are doing code going to the right. And this is so because the software cannot look at something on the left side or anything behind the lookup value. And like I said, we're borrowing a lot of principles here when you'll be advancing to the business intelligence class. Comma, column index number. So what it says here is information from this table array, which are in which column number do you want to be transferred to the employee worksheet. So I want information on status, which is 1. I'll count from code That's the first column. So column index number 1. Index is just how to identify. Again, when you'll be doing your Python, you'll be doing a lot of indexing. So this is another place where you're borrowing from the same. So column 1 or index 1, 2. So I want information for status. So status will be 2, comma, I want exact match, exactly the same thing that is in this table array. So I don't want approximate, I want the exact. I will select and press enter. I'm getting full time, which is true. FT means full time. I autofill. I get some results, but until some point, the software returns NA, which basically means, oh, I don't know what to do. So in this case, I have to do the absolute referencing so that I log the table array. Let's use the second method. So instead of doing it manually, I'll highlight ref. So just highlight the table array coordinates, which is F7 and H11. And then go to F4 key. And if you press F4, you'll see that now you have $ in where they're supposed to be. Press enter and autofill. You should be getting results for everyone. I want you to try for paid period. And the only thing you will change is the column index number. Just follow the same procedure, but just change the column index number from 2 to 3. What does that mean? You'll say column 1, column 2, column 3. So for paid period, is column index number 3. I want to introduce HLOOKUP for paid period during class, but for you, you should try both of them. And like I said, the knowledge of both of these functions will come in handy. So for HLOOKUP, we say this is when the table array information are on the rows. So I want to copy this table array starting from code, and I'll paste somewhere. But now I want to paste it as I want to transpose so that the column section to come on the row. So I'll go to paste special and then transpose. Click OK. And there you go. Now I want to extract details that are on the horizontal. So I'll start from the employee worksheet, go to paid period, =HLOOKUP. The same drill. The lookup value is FT, comma, table array is now the entire table, comma, row index number, so information from which row. So I'll count from code, row number 1, 2 for status, and paid period is 3, comma, I want the exact match. If I press enter, I'm getting monthly, but I have to put the absolute referencing. So just highlight and use the A4 key. Press enter and autofill. I'm getting the same results, but this time I've used both H and VLOOKUP. That will mark the end of this session. See you in our lecture 3.